with that, you can reply to with Max with that.
Théo France, is the application form you talked about finished? And if yes, can you briefly explain it?
Thank you, Annette. I have a direct from Max.
Max, the training coordinator. So yeah, it was used for the last online TNT already. So we basically have four categories. We ask maybe for their understanding of training in general, for their previous experience with training, for their future plans and what they like to do with the skills acquired, and what they already bring to the table in skills. So in these four categories are then judged anonymously, like there's a counting system, and in the end the mean numbers, so the one with the highest score wins. And in addition, there's also scores or points given for associations. That if the applicant comes from an association which has 0 or 1 trainer, so that it's a bit pushing the members who don't have trainers, and if they already applied for a TNT in the past.
Thank you, Max. I have a direct from Annette.
It is gonna, Théo France, is it gonna be a different form for each TNT? If not, why you didn't just put the name of it in the changes?
Thank you, Theo. Direct from Matt.
Actually, training coordinator. I didn't put it into the handbook in order to have a bit more freedom. If someone wants to change it during the mandate, they can. It just needs to be finished before, like it needs to be transparent before the call starts, so that everyone knows what the criteria are. I was planning to put it into guidelines for a TNT, so which would then be voted on by the executive, so to have it official.
Thank you. I have a direct from Annette.
Théo France, will you ask the opinion of LSs before releasing the form each time?
Thank you. I have a direct from Matt.
Actually, training coordinator, no, because it's criteria that is defined by trainers, and since most of the LSs are not trainers, I could ask you for your opinions, but I do not want to say I don't value it as much in this regard, but yeah, I stop.
Thank you. I have a direct from Annette.
Théo and France, we think that it's really important that we have a regard on this, as the TNT is open to every pharmaceutical student in Europe, so the criteria for selection must be in, like, we think that we have to say our opinion on the criteria.
Thank you. Okay, I don't have any more points on this, so I have KNPSV with a new point.
Jason KNPSV Netherlands. Actually wants to go back to the report handbook and for the last question of the report.
Can you state the number of the chapter?
Yes, chapter 3.6. It's more detail. Yeah. Okay, so well, will be an investigation if the incoming team member has not deemed the handover sufficient, because otherwise I think the new team member will have a lot of power they can misuse.
I just want to ask, is this not the same question you asked before?
I mean, no.
Okay, well, thank you. I will ask you if they want to reply. I have a clarification From Joseph?
Joseph, could you rephrase the question? I don't think I understood correctly.
Jason Kate, PCV Netherlands. For the team fund, the incoming team member has to approve of it. What happens if he doesn't approve of it? Does there come an investigation or not? Because I think the incoming team member has a lot of power that can be misused.
Thank you. I have a point of information from Mihai.
Mihai APP. The 6/1st meeting report is always accepted by the executive with a vote. It is not accepted by the person incoming or anything related with that.
Thank you, Mihai. Do I have any points on this? And then do I have any new points under the motion in general regarding the handbooks? I have a point from EPSA International Turkey.
İlgim EPSA International Turkey. We have a question about LS Handbook Annex 1. There is no colors in the motion, so is it to be removed or to be added? Probably removed, but
thank you, I'm so sorry. This may have been a mistake when formatting the document, so just a minute to find the correct. Okay, I'm so sorry. The problem was that we have Annex 2 written down, but that changes on the Annex 1. And this is the motivation given by the executive that you were reading, that they are proposing this change because the entity was dropped, and the text they were removing is that one. So the text that you see without any highlight should be highlighted in red. It's to remove it. Is this okay?
yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you. Then I'll ask if there are any other questions regarding any handbook. I have a new point from KNTSB.
Jason, KNTSB Netherlands. I want to ask a question about the EPSA Coordinator's Handbook.
Technical from Joseph.
Joseph, yeah, please have the mic closer to your mouth and speak slower and also like more loudly.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jason, just tell us the number of the article, the chapter, so we can.
Chapter 5.5.1.
5.1. Okay. Thank you. Go ahead and state your point.
Why was and the president added? Because wouldn't the vice president of European Affairs be sufficient?
Thank you. Does anyone wish to respond? Yusuf, with the direct?
Joseph, President.
I will remind you that yesterday they said for the live stream they
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
need to.
Yes, sir, President. So it was basically not a good practice. It was a practice in past that the president was helping out and overseeing the grant application. So we just wanted to put it in the regulations for the future generation, so this won't be forgotten.
Thank you, Direct from Mihai.
Mihai APP, and maybe I can provide a bit more background. Since I was president, I held the grant coordinator, I know everything that is there and why this is happening. The grant application has a lot of administrative details that VPA doesn't know related to meetings, because meetings are the core concept somehow, let's say, of how we get a grant, and that's why we need the president in there. You can't do it only with VPA, and we wanted to make it transparent.
Thank you, Mihai. Are there any more questions on this handbook or any other handbook? I have a new point from outside Portugal.
Luciano Pep, Portugal. In the Twinnet project handbook, there is not the motivation, so we are all aware why it is important to regulate the Twinnet project. But could you then update it, because for future LSs, ODs, and EPSA team members to register and to be notified about this? Thank you.
Thank you, Luciano. I will ask you to bring that point up when we are voting on the Twinnet project handbook, since this is a new handbook and it will be on a separate motion. It's not included on this one. I will ask again if there are any questions regarding the changes in the handbook, the new handbook.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. I don't see any new points being raised. And in order to close before I need the chairperson of the 9.3. Joseph, for the technical.
Mr. President, I close the floor for discussion.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to voting on the motion as it reads. The 62nd EPSA General Assembly approves the changes proposed by the EPSA Executive to the following handbooks: EPSA Coordinator's Handbook, LS Handbook and its Annexes, Events Handbook and its Annexes, EPSA House Handbook, Reports Handbook, EPSA Training Projects Handbook, EPSA Library Handbook, Public Relations Handbook and its Annexes, Alumni Project Handbook, and the Advocacy Platform Handbook. I will ask if there are any votes against, any abstentions, and who votes for? Thank you. You can lower your voting cards. I have 23 votes for, none against, and no abstentions, so the motion was carried and the changes have been accepted. We'll move on to the next motion. The 62nd EPSA General Assembly approves the EPSA Archives Handbook for... It's missing the EPSA. No? The EPSA Archives Handbook is correct, sorry. proposed by the executive. I'll open the floor for discussion on this motion. I don't see any points being raised. For the technical.
Joseph, President, I close the floor for discussion.
Thank you, Joseph. Then we'll move on to voting on the motion as it reads. The 62nd EPSA General Assembly approves the EPSA Archive Handbook proposed by the executive. I will ask if there are any votes against, any abstentions, and who votes for. Thank you. You can lower your voting cards. I had 23 votes for, none against, and no abstentions, so the motion was carried unanimously, and the EPSA Archive Handbook was approved. I have a technical from Česipa de Slovenia.
Can you just go one slide back? I think you're missing S in the motion. It's EPSA Archives in the end.
That's what I asked you. I thought so, but no, it was proposed like this to exactly clarify me. I have a point of information from Marlene.
Marlene, Secretary General. The project is called EPSA Archive.
Okay.
Okay, I can explain that. That's PC who makes these documents, and I thought that there was an S too. I put the S there, but the name of the document is wrong. The motion is correct, which is Marina with the technical.
In this section, we can uniform it at some point, just to make it one way or the other.
Yeah.
Thank you. It shall be done, and we'll move on to the next motion. Now, the 62nd EPSA General Assembly approves the Twinnet project handbook proposed by the executive. Apek, if you want to repeat your point, I open the floor for discussion, and Apek, if you want to repeat your point, go ahead.
Luciana by Portugal. Yeah, in the Twinnet project handbook there is no motivation highlighted. So for future EPSA team members, LSs, ODs to understand what has been done and to be registered. Thank you.
Thank you. Indeed, there has to be a motivation. There must have been a mistake on our end. I'm sorry. So I will give the floor to Joseph to present this motivation.
Thank you very much. Joseph, President. So the EPSA executive are proposing this new handbook to regulate the long-standing Twinnet project, as we believe that this is one of the oldest and most important projects in the mobility area in EPSA, and therefore it should be regulated for the future.
Thank you. Are there any points under the Twinnet project handbook? I don't see any. And to close the floor for discussion on the motion, I need an item 3 or the chair. Joseph?
Joseph, President, I close the floor for discussion.
Thank you, Joseph. Then we'll move on to voting on the motion as it reads. The 62nd EPSA General Assembly approves the Twinnet project handbook proposed by the executive. I ask if there are votes against, if there are any abstentions, and who votes for. You can lower your voting cards. Thank you. I have 23 votes for, none against, and no abstentions. So the motion was carried unanimously. All right, we'll move on to the EPSA Compendium and its annexes. And I will read the motion. The 62nd EPSA General Assembly approves the changes of the EPSA Compendium and its annexes proposed by the executive. I open the floor for discussion on this motion. I have a new point from Piotr, from EPSA Poland.
Piotr, EPSA Poland. I actually noticed two mistakes in the past EPSA team. The first one is Social Services and Public Health Coordinator. It should be Public Health and Social Services Coordinator. And the second one, there's wrong country right beside my name. It's GPR and should be Poland.
Joseph, President, we are very sorry for this mistake, and we'll correct it, so everything will be fine.
Yes, we understood. We're just taking notes so that we don't forget to change it. Then this will be amended. Okay, the motion now, this is second EPSA General Assembly approves the amended changes of the EPSA compendium and its annexes proposed by the executive. I open the floor for discussion on the motion. Does anyone else have a point they wish to raise? I have a technical from Joseph.
Joseph, President, I close the floor for discussion.
Thank you, Joseph. Then we'll move on to voting on the motion as it reads. The 62nd EPSA General Assembly approves the amended changes of the EPSA compendium and its annexes proposed by the executive. I ask if there are votes against, if there are any abstentions, and who votes for? Okay, you can lower your voting cards. Thank you. I had 23 votes for, none against, and no abstentions, so the motion was carried unanimously. And we'll move on to the next point, which is the EPSA Important Decisions document. And I will read the motion as soon as I have it. The 62nd EPSA General Assembly approves the changes of the EPSA Important Decisions document proposed by the executive. I open the floor for discussion on the motion. Joseph with the, no, I have a new point from Mihai. I mean, no, I still have a technical from you first.
Oh, no, sorry.
Okay. Mihai?
Mihai, quickly, I actually have a question for you. Did everyone understand the num for you? Because that was a confusion, a hard thing to write down, let's say. And I'm not sure if it was clear for everyone or not. So could you confirm, yes, no?
Motion cards that were promised since the first day. Can the room just do this or this if it was clear or not? Okay, I have a clarification from Asset Switcher. It was dropped, so there was general agreement and positive emotions shown. I'll ask if there's any other points that you want to discuss in this motion. I see no new points being raised. Joseph?
Joseph, President, I close the floor for discussion.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to voting on the motion as it reads. The 62nd EPSA General Assembly approves the changes of the EPSA Important Decisions document proposed by the executive. I will ask if there are any votes against, if there are any abstentions, and who votes for? You can lower your voting cards. Thank you. I have 23 votes for, none against, and no abstentions. So the motion was carried unanimously and the EPSA Important Decisions document changes were approved. Alright, we'll move on to the next point of the agenda. I have Joseph technical.
Joseph, President, can we have 3 minutes just to quickly discuss the agenda? Because we have 15 minutes left of this session. Yes?
motions. Let's see the first one. I will read it. The 62nd EPSA General Assembly mandates the EPSA executive to update all EPSA regulations according to the changes to the regulations approved by the 62nd EPSA General Assembly. I'll ask the executive to give motivation. Joseph?
Joseph, President. So this is proposed basically every GA when there are regulation changes. It's just to correct all the numberings and everything as we mentioned previously during the discussions.
Thank you. I'll open the floor for discussion on the motion. Does anyone have any questions? I don't see any new points being raised. Joseph for the technical.
Joseph, President, I close the floor for discussion.
And then we'll move on to voting on the motion as it reads. The 62nd EPSA General Assembly mandates the EPSA executive to update all EPSA regulations according to the changes to the regulations approved by the 62nd EPSA General Assembly. I'll ask if there are any votes against, if there are any abstentions, and who votes for. Please raise your voting cards high. Marlena with the technical.
Marlena section SFP then like that room now they lost.
Yes. Yes, they did lose their voting rights, but we will have to do a roll call. Okay, if there an OD left the room, so the only OD that was here for an association, so this voting process is invalid. And okay. We will have to redo the roll call and collect the voting cards. So I will give the floor to Marlene.
Please prepare your voting cards to hand into the scrutineer. Thank you. I have Austria, EPSA Belgium, EPSA Cyprus, EPSA Czech Republic, South Denmark, Annex France, EPSA Germany, EPSA Greece, EPSA Latvia, SFP Lithuania, EPSA Finland delegated to SFP Lithuania. Kirat NLP that SFP the Netherlands, NAPSA Norway, SNAP Sweden delegated to NAPSA Norway, EPSA Poland, AP Portugal, Transfer Romania, SPSA Slovakia, Slovenia, NAPSA Serbia delegated to Slovenia, FF Spain, ASEP Switzerland, EPSA International Turkey, and EPSA United Kingdom. I have collected 23 voting cards.
And I suspend the standing orders. Just for everyone to know, please don't leave the room without the technical. So we can excuse you as ODs, you are mandated to be at the GA. We'll proceed to a new roll call.
South Denmark, just so you know, you are not allowed to leave the room when you are the only OD and keep your voting card. You have to put it technically, you have to give your voting card back since you will lose your voting privileges for the session if you're not present. And we are now with the standing order suspended because we have to collect all voting cards and then we'll have to put them all in again because of this situation.
Just to clarify, since you haven't given your voting card back during the roll call, you're losing the voting rights for now, for this roll call until the next roll call.
Then we'll start the roll call. I have Avod Austria, EPSA Belgium, EPSA Cyprus, EPSA Czech Republic, ANA France, PPHD Germany, GPSF Greece, EPSA Ireland, LPC Latvia, SFD Lithuania, FIPSA Finland, delegated to SFD Lithuania, K.NO, P.SFD the Netherlands, NAPSO Norway, SNAPS Sweden, delegated to NAPSO Norway, PPSA Poland, up to Portugal, FASPA Romania, SPC Slovakia, SHSC Slovenia, NAPSA Serbia, delegated to SHSC Slovenia, FIPSA Spain, ASA Switzerland, FIPSA International Turkey, and PPSA United Kingdom. Sorry, Slovenia. I have 22 voting members present.
And I resume the standing orders.
Thank you. Then we will resume the voting. The 62nd EPSA General Assembly mandates the EPSA executives to update all regulations according to the changes to the regulations approved by the 62nd EPSA General Assembly. I'll ask if there are any votes against, if there are any abstentions, and who votes for. You can lower your voting cards. We have 22 votes for, and against, and no abstentions. So the motion was approved. And we'll move on to the next motion. The 62nd EPSA General Assembly allows the EPSA executive to be reimbursed up to 500 euros for travel costs from the EPSA budget to host live executive meetings between the 62nd EPSA General Assembly and the 63rd EPSA General Assembly. I'll ask the executive for go ahead, motivation.
Mr. President, we are proposing this motion as we believe that it's very beneficial for the executive to meet live. It was also done in past, in previous GAs, when it was possible to actually meet live. So that's our motivation to propose this motion again at this GA.
Thank you. Then I'll open the floor for discussion. Does anyone have a comment or a question they want to make? I see no new points being raised. Oh, I have a technical from Annette.
Théo Annette France, there is two in the motion.
Oh, thank you. Do I have any other thing that anyone has to say? I have a new question from Asset Switzerland.
Elena Azat Switzerland, we're just wondering why you propose this motion every time again, and can't that be like a general motion that you get the money allocated for one live meeting between every general assembly? Thank you. Is it clear?
Thank you, Elena. I have a director, Mihai.
Mihai PP. Usually the process is the following. You get something, you start it with a motion, especially when it involves money, to make sure you have members' acknowledgement and approval. And if you see it happening again and again, then you turn it into a regulation change and you can implement it as you say. The pandemic came right between we started to do something and we actually got to do it as regulation. So the idea is to still have it maybe 1-2 years done this way, and then if we see it's always happening and it's constantly beneficial and everything, it will be reg change, because reg change is permanent. A motion can be not proposed or dropped by members. So we want to make sure that this is actually common practice and a good one.
Thank you. Do I have any new points? I see none. So I'll need 9.3 or the chairperson to close the floor. Joseph?
Joseph, President, I close the floor for discussion.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to the voting on the motion as it reads. The 62nd EPSA General Assembly allows the EPSA executive to be reimbursed up to 500 euros for travel costs from the EPSA budget to host live executive meetings between the 62nd EPSA General Assembly and the 63rd EPSA General Assembly. I ask if there is any votes against, if there are any abstentions, and who votes for. You can lower your voting cards. Thank you. I had 22 votes for, none against, and no abstentions. So the motion was carried unanimously. We'll move on to the next one. The 62nd EPSA General Assembly mandates the EPSA executive to form the statutes working group for revision of the EPSA statutes. The working group shall deliver the proposal for the changes by the 63rd General Assembly. I ask the executive for motivation. Joseph?
Joseph, President. So, for all of you to know, the EPSA statutes last revision was in the mandate 2013-2014. When we had our handover as the executive, we found out that there are some things that should be corrected. And since statutes need extraordinary GA, and there's a special procedure to that, and they shouldn't be opened very often, we think that it's a good idea to review them as a whole. And since this task is very time consuming and should have a lot of focus, because statutes is our highest regulation, it's basically on a level of law, we propose to start, or you to mandate us to open the working group.
Thank you. I open the floor for discussion on the motion. Does anyone have a new point regarding this? I have no points being raised. Joseph, for the technical?
Joseph, President, I close the floor for discussion.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to voting on the motion as it reads. The 62nd EPSA General Assembly mandates the EPSA executive to form the statutes working group for revision of the EPSA statutes. The working group shall deliver the proposal for changes by the 63rd General Assembly. I ask if there are any votes against, if there are any abstentions, and who votes for. Okay, you can lower your voting cards. Thank you. I had 22 votes for, none against, and no abstentions, so the motion was carried unanimously. We'll move on to the next motion. The 62nd EPSA General Assembly mandates the EPSA executive to perform an investigation on how to grow EPSA's presence in Brussels and engagement with the stakeholders. The result of the investigation shall be presented at the 64th General Assembly at the latest. I ask from the executive, Joseph.
Joseph, President. This motion is coming from the strategic plan, as there is a part on investigation about EPSA's presence in Brussels, and therefore we want to make it a motion as well. So the General Assembly, once again, mandates the executive to do this.
Thank you. I open the floor for discussion on the motion. Are there any points? I see none. Joseph for the technical.
Joseph, President, I close the floor for discussion.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to voting on the motion as it reads. The 62nd EPSA General Assembly mandates the EPSA executive to perform an investigation on how to grow EPSA's presence in Brussels and engagement with the stakeholders. The result of the investigation shall be presented to the 64th General Assembly at the latest. I ask if there are any votes against, any abstentions, and who votes for? Okay, you can lower your voting cards. We have 22 votes for, none against, and no abstentions. So the motion was carried unanimously. Okay, sorry. Okay. Sorry guys, and we'll move on to this motion. The 62nd EPSA General Assembly suspends Article 22.1.2 of TORSO until the 1st of September 2022. I ask the executive for motivation. Joseph.
Yes, President. So, we are proposing this motion because, as we stated before in the updates of the events, the next event should be annual congress, and according to regulations, annual congress have to happen annually, as all of the other events. Okay, thank you, PC, for putting up the article. Yes, as it states, EPSA events shall be organized annually during the EPSA Annual Congress and the EPSA Autumn Assembly. The General Assembly of the Association shall be held. As we stated previously, the next event should be just the GA, and therefore we have to overrule the section of the torso to be compliant with it.
Thank you, Joseph. I open the floor for discussion on the motion. Are there any points? I see none. So, Joseph, for the technical?
Yes, President, I close the floor for discussion.
Thank you. We'll move on to voting on the motion as it reads. The 62nd EPSA General Assembly suspends Article 22.1.2 of TORSO until the 1st of September 2022. I'll ask if there are any votes against. If there are any abstentions, and who votes for? You can lower your voting cards. Thank you. I had 22 votes for, none against, and no abstentions, so the motion was carried unanimously. And we'll move on to the next motion. The 62nd EPSA General Assembly mandates the EPSA Executive to... Oh. Sorry, guys. Okay. The 62nd EPSA General Assembly mandates that members who have not paid their membership fee by the start of the 63rd EPSA General Assembly shall be considered in the arrears for the year 2022. I ask the executive for motivation. Joseph?
Yes, President. So regarding membership fees, they are tied by our regulations to the events. Once again, because there will be no annual congress, we have to go with the GA. So there will be a specific point of time for calculating the deadlines for membership fees.
Thank you, Joseph. I open the floor for discussion on the motion. Does anyone have any points? I see none. Joseph with the technical.
Joseph, President, I close the floor for discussion.
Thank you. We'll move on to voting on the motion as it reads. Second EPSA General Assembly mandates that persons who have not paid their membership fee by the start of the 63rd EPSA General Assembly shall be considered in the arrears for the year 2022. I ask if there are any votes against, any abstentions, and who votes for? Thank you. You can lower your voting cards. I have 22 votes for, none against, and no abstentions, so the motion was carried unanimously. We'll move on to the next motion. The 62nd EPSA General Assembly mandates the EPSA executive to investigate the visa application system for all countries represented in EPSA. The first update shall be given at the 63rd EPSA General Assembly, and the results of the investigation shall be presented to the 65th EPSA General Assembly at the latest. I ask Joseph.
Joseph, President. So we as EPSA Executive are proposing this based on the unfortunate events that we've been informed about in the LS emailing group. We would like to find out how to prevent this situation in future. Therefore, we are proposing this motion to make it happen.
Thank you. I open the floor for discussion on the motion. I have a new point from Annex.
Théo France. Why the result of the investigation have to be at the 65th? Because it's quite long.
Thank you, Theo. I have a direct from Joseph.
Joseph, President. So basically the timeline is split to two deadlines, since the visa processes around Europe can be quite complicated, and we really want to make sure that this is done correctly. So that's the first deadline is basically just investigation on the status of the state of play, and the next deadline is how to solve it, how to address the first part of the investigation.
Thank you, Joseph. I have a direct from Mihai.
Mihai, maybe just to add on that, the next executive, the other one, will have to include the members in the discussion, because a change in the registration system will have quite a big impact, and that's also to be taken into account. And when you involve more people, it takes more time automatically. So this is why the timeline is on the road.
Thank you. I have a new point from Joseph.
Elena Azam, Switzerland. We were just wondering how you want to lead the investigation. Will it be done by a lawyer, or who will do it? Thank you.
Thank you. I have a direct from Joseph.
Joseph, President. Well, that's the part of the investigation. We don't know yet. We have to assess the whole situation, and if there will be need for a lawyer or any assistance and a consultancy, we'll proceed with that.
Thank you. Okay. I have a question from Daniela. Please bring the microphone there. Oh, I think.
Yeah, Daniela, I wanted just to say that we can also ask EPSA, because they are also really pros in that, or the Euro or whatever. And yeah, so maybe we don't have to do much.
Then I have a new point from Faspera, Romania.
Andrei, Faspera, Romania. Could you please maybe explain, like in general, the situation that happened on the email? Because there are some people here that maybe do not know what's happened.
Thank you. I have a direct from Carolina.
Yes, Carolina from TIA. So an email has been sent to the whole LS group from one of the LSs. It was Eyüp from Turkey, EPSA Turkey, sorry. He had an issue with his visa application, and that's why he is not with us today. We have responded to his email, and we liaised with the RC for the response. We will be also having a meeting with them but unfortunately due to all that is going on the Congress, we have not yet decided on the concrete date. So probably after the Congress we will have a meeting with him and discuss the issue, and this is also one of the solutions we propose because as we can see it is an issue in our bubble.
Thank you, Carolina. Does anyone have a new point? Okay, I have a new point from the EPSA. No?
MUPSA.
MUPSA, sorry.
I am MUPSA Istanbul, Turkey. As you know, AUPs are LS, and the question is regarding the visa application issue that we had. Will there be investigation about the visa invitation from the EPSA? That I mean the sorry. Does the investigation include the visa invitation from EPSA that sent late?
Thank you.
Thank
I have
you.
a direct from you.
Yes, Mr. President. EPSA is not issuing any letters for visa. It never did before. Or the invitation letter, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you, yes, sir. I have a direct from MUPSA.
No.
No?
No.
It dropped?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Then I ask if anyone has a point. Alright, I see no points being raised. And Joseph? Joseph?
Joseph, President, I close the floor for discussion.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to voting on the motion as it reads. The 62nd EPSA General Assembly mandates the EPSA Executive to investigate a visa application system for all countries represented in EPSA. The first update shall be given at the 63rd EPSA General Assembly, and the results of the investigation shall be presented to the 65th EPSA General Assembly at the latest. I ask if there are any votes against, any abstentions, and who votes for? Okay, you can lower your voting card. Thank you. I had 22 votes for, none against, and no abstentions. So the motion was carried unanimously. We will move on to the next point of the agenda, which is member motions. We have not received any member motion, any motion from members, and now I have a technical from Joseph.
Yes, Mr. President. Since we don't have any member motions, we would be done for today with the agenda. But we have among us here Youngshin, the EPSA Science Coordinator, and we would be really happy if you could hear her out regarding her report. Sorry, so she could present her report and we could vote on it.
I will ask the GA.
Because tomorrow she will be hosting the Science Day and also a workshop, so she's not available during the whole day. This is the only opportunity for her to address the GA with her report.
Now I'll ask the floor if show a motion if they agree or not. We have general agreement with this. So we will yield for the technical.
Yes, President. The second thing, for the participants in the back, you're not, because we are going over the time, you're not mandated to be here. If you want to go and grab the lunch, feel free to so, but please, please, please be quiet with it so you're not disturbing the rest of the GA. Okay, I got a message. The lunch is in the hotel.
Okay, thank you, Joseph. And now, yes, we will continue. We'll go back to the educational department with the missing report, the report there will be for the discussion. I call Youngshin to come here to present the update and what work you have done since submitting your report, please. Oh, I have a technical question for the school meeting.
Can I choose myself what I can?
Yes. If you have two of these and only one leaves, you don't have to put a technical. You do have your money.
That's my decision, but okay.
What else? If PC is taking over, or? Sorry guys. Okay. Youngshin?
I'm Youngshin. I'm science coordinator. Oh, yeah, this works better. As for my updates, I've mainly focused on 3 projects. First, Science Day, I have collaborated with the Euromed Communications as a prize for the prize of the oral session. We decided that the winners, or rather winners, are going to publish their posters in their magazine. Furthermore, I've made a booklet of abstracts and distributed this to the juries and the participants. I've also opened the normal and separate registrations. Even though there was not a lot of time this year since the annual congress was so close, we still managed to have an adequate amount of participants, and I've contacted the juries about Science Day and the structure and given them all the information that they needed. As for ESSP, I've published one edition this year and requested the materials for the next open call item in advance, so we can quickly start with the second edition. And I've also maintained a good collaboration with UFEPS. Lastly, I've worked on Science Monthly and published the October edition, which was written by SSSFD. I've also opened the call for collaboration with other liaison secretaries on Science Monthly, and we already have 2 editions planned for the next 2 months. The call is going to be extended since we did not fill all the topics, and also because I was a bit busy. But lastly, I also actually EPSA contacted us about another edition which they wrote in the past, and we concluded that we could publish this as well. So to also maintain a good relation with them, and hopefully we could collaborate with them on more projects like ESSP, for example, but that hasn't been worked out yet. So that's it.
Thank you, Youngshin. And I'll ask the floor if they have any questions for the science coordinator report. I have a new point from Anna. Anna. Sorry.
To Annette France, I just have a little question, and thanks for your works and for your report. In order to have more participants in your Science Day, what do you think about sharing feedback from previous participants in collaboration with Pierre on promotion materials? This could give an idea of the workload and yeah.
Thank you, too. If you wish to reply, you have to put it there. Okay, Youngshin.
Yes, thank you.
You have to take your name and position before.
My apologies. Youngshin, Science Coordinator. Yes, I would like to collect the feedback as well from the participants so we can learn more from it. Thank you for advice as well.
Thank you. Then I have a new point from Pascara.
Andrei, fast for Romania, congratulations on your report and work done so far. I want to ask you if you have what ideas you have in mind for promotion so that science department activities and publications reach more students.
Thank you. direct from Youngshin.
Youngshin science coordinator. I do not have concrete plans yet as I was quite busy with preparing Science Day and other projects which was also combined in my portfolio. So, but after Science Day I would like to have more concrete plans, but for now just to promote it more often on social media as if for example, we did not do the last minute deadline for example, the open, Science Day is open for only a week left. We didn't do that, so people might have missed the deadline because of that as well.
Thank you, Youngshin. I have a new point from APEC Portugal.
Luciana Beth Portugal, thank you also for your report and work. Your predecessor wanted to organize an online science excursion with the National Pharmacy Museum of Lisbon. So do you have any updates about this? Thank you.
Thank you, Apep. Youngshin with the direct.
Youngshin science coordinator. I was aware that you wanted to collaborate with a museum for an online science excursion, but I wasn't aware of it being with the National University of Lisbon, Pharmacy Association. Yeah. But we didn't do it right now because everything is physical. And I haven't put much thought in it yet, but I will consider it and look at it soon. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Do I have any new points? I see none, so we'll move on to the motion. The 62nd EPSA General Assembly accepts the following coordinators' annual Congress reports 2021-2022. Science coordinator. I open the floor for discussion on the motion. Joseph with the technical.
Joseph, President, I close the floor for discussion.
Thank you, Joseph. Then we'll move on to voting. The 62nd EPSA General Assembly accepts the following coordinators' annual Congress reports 2021-2022. Science coordinators. I ask if there are any votes against. Any abstentions? And who votes for? Okay, thank you. You can lower your voting cards. I had 22 votes for, none against, no abstentions, so the motion was carried unanimously and your report was approved. I have a new point from Yosa.
Joseph, President, thank you very much for the discussion today. Since we are done with everything that was planned for today on the agenda and also something extra, thank you again for that. We will proceed to the roll call. Oh yeah, we won't have the emergency GA session in the afternoon. You can go for sightseeing. We are on time with everything, so it's good.
The roll call. After Austria, EPSA Belgium, EPSA Cyprus, EPSA Czech Republic, Anna France, EPSA Germany, EPSA Greece, EPSA Latvia, SFP Lithuania, EPSA Finland delegated to SFP Lithuania, P.N.STP the Netherlands, NOPSA Norway, SNEP Sweden delegated to NOPSA Norway, EPSA Poland, APEC Portugal, FASPA Romania, SPSA Slovakia, Citizens for Slovenia, NAPSA Soka delegated to Citizens for Slovenia, FF Spain, ASEP Switzerland, EPSA International Turkey, EPSA United Kingdom. I have collected 22 voting cards.